SAG-AFTRA video game actors went on strike.
Artificial intelligence, the core of yet another strike impacting the entertainment industry.
Who is a performer and who is just data?
Take our data, make a model out of it, and then they use that model instead of us.
You are taking their career away.
A video game studio can generate a duplicate of you to compete against you and maybe not even have to pay that duplicate. That's not a tenable situation for anyone.
Hello, my name is Luke Dale, and I play this guy. Matter of fact, I've played this guy for nearly a decade.
Bizarre.
If you didn't know, this is Sir Hans Capon, a young lord from 1403 Bohemia, in the popular video game series Kingdom Come Deliverance by Warhorse Studios. But the really unique thing about this is that this guy is me. You see, when I was just starting out as an actor, fresh out of drama school, I signed a contract with Warhorse Studios. It gave them the full rights to use my likeness, voice, and physical performance. It's crazy when you think about it. My very physical being has been indelibly transmogrified into a digital character for people to play with until the end of time. It's definitely something to tell the grandkids about. So it's safe to say that I've got a pretty unique perspective when it comes to video games, performance capture, and now what all those actors are protesting about in Hollywood, the use of AI.
Now I should say that I'm very lucky. Okay, I've worked with Warhorse Studios for nearly 10 years of my life. And as far as I know, they have absolutely no interest in using AI in the way that we'll be discussing here. They have recorded more dialogue and written more scripts themselves in-house, not using any artificial intelligence, than pretty much any other studio on the face of the earth. So this is nothing to do with them. They're actually doing things the way that every actor dreams of. But I think it's very important that I explore this because I have been in the industry for so long and it's given me so much, and I do have a unique perspective on it.
I'm keen to find out if AI really is the villain of the piece, or are we overlooking some of the value that it might offer to the video game world? Only one way to find out.
The video game industry is 7 to 8 times bigger than the global box office revenue of Hollywood. In 2022, the gaming industry was worth about $187 billion, and Hollywood was worth about $26 billion. But Luke, why are we talking about AI all of a sudden? Hasn't AI been used in games since like Pac-Man? Yeah, it has. Historically, AI has been used in games to create more immersion for the player. So prompt tasks for the player to do, or small behavioral tasks for NPCs to do. It just creates a more living, breathing world. And usually those sorts of tasks are automated by artificial intelligence. So why are we talking about it now? Well, it's probably unsurprising to you that in 2022, ChatGPT came on the block. And the rollout of that created lots of new possibilities for AI to be implemented and disrupt the way we make games currently. This growing fear from an unknown entity that might steal your job has just gotten worse and worse, and understandably a lot of people are not happy.
The way AI works is it's statistics. So basically, you feed the machine data, and it learns from the data, and what it gives you is not something creative or unique or new. It gives you the norm. It gives you the thing that has the smallest standard deviation. And it gets rid of outliers. Performers are outliers. That's what makes this exciting.
Any work that I bring to my writing, any work that an actor or a voice actor brings to their performances, anything that a game designer brings to their work, it's the result of their experiences. They're not just the reference points, not just the games that they've played, but it's also the novels that they've read. It's also the friendships that they've made. It's also just, whatever D&D campaigns that they've been running for years that have just created all these sort of different touch points that they're able to draw upon. And generative AI, it's not a thing that's curious. it's not anything. It's a tool. It's a computational tool. I keep referring to it as autocomplete, and I know that's flattening it down into something that's very, very small, but that's essentially what it is. You're not asking autocomplete on your phone to respond back to you with any kind of meaningful experience, because it has none.
Sure, you can program an AI to do pretty much whatever you think it is, but because there's no thought behind it, what it produces may not be what it was that you were looking for. And if you want to change it, well, then you have to reprogram it. Whereas with the performer, performers bring unexpected things. And also there's that chemistry between performers.
And those organic, surprising, like lovely moments can only occur when two humans are in the room together and they're surprising each other with their actions and behavior. And like, that's like what's so fun about acting, is when like the person across from you does something unexpected, so you do something unexpected, and then you can watch that back and it's like this beautiful, glorious moment just happened. And that's what actually connects people to a game like Kingdom Come, because it's like, oh, that was fun, that was refreshing.
So what's really confusing to me is, how are you going to try to replace us with bad acting? I don't think AI can act, and I don't know if it ever will be able to act. If you can lift a word here and there inflection wise, like, that's not acting.
If it gets to the point where it's so realistic and you're fine-tuning so many details and, you know, making sure the computer spits out exactly what you want and it's all cohesive throughout the whole story, people will kind of be like, man, this is like a lot, this is kind of like a lot of work on honing it in, when we could have just like had a real dude come in and say his line.
At some point, it's like, if you're going to spend 3 hours doing that, like, just hire me.
I've never been in a session where I'm like, I leave it and I'm like, a computer could have done that. Like, the directors are picky, no matter what kind of session, commercial, you know, video game promo, like, they're picky. Directors are picky, the client's picky. So I just feel like it's not them. It's like the higher ups who just don't care. And they don't realize that we're actually pretty cheap. Like, voiceover is like, you know, a video game session is $1,000. You can't pay $1,000 for someone to work for like up to 4 hours. Like, that's, you know, that's just as crazy to me.
The performances are what really makes a game. And we've seen that with some of the biggest games in the past, you know, decades or so. The Last of Us, you know, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, and the sequels. I did background or wallow work for Spider-Man, and people were walking around and making TikTok videos of the NPCs just talking in the background. And that was literally 4 of us in a room improvising for 4 hours. And people found it so fun and so amusing that they started ripping those clips and putting them on TikTok. It's like, that's something that we know people appreciate because they're making video clips of it.
Do I think that audiences care about what's happening? I don't think they give a shit. They care about having a good experience. They care about story.
If AI were able to generate great games, I would be sweating it a lot. I would be very, very worried because I'd be out of a job. But that's not the case. And I think we're probably many, many, many years away from anything like that.
You might be able to make a cheap game, but I don't think you'll be able to make a good game. And I think ultimately the customer, if you're looking at the bottom line, they're going to know the difference.
So it's important to note that if I'm an actor and I want to work on a video game right now in the industry, and I walk into the studio and I give my likeness, my voice, my performance, my movement, all of that is owned by the studio, and they can use AI to do whatever they want with it. Extrapolate it, stretch it, change it completely, without paying you a single more dime for any of that work. You are paid for the initial work you do, and bye-bye. This is kind of a problem.
Actors have finally figured out that they are being exploited.
Video games have really been the first medium to really use AI, specifically synthetic voice production and digital doubles, in a real, tangible way.
Actors have to record a massive database of sounds, of words, of phrases, of sentences. That's very useful for generative AI.
They've been using it to some extent for a long time.
Just because you've taken it from us in the past and you consider that to be the status quo and the way in which you've always done games, which is an argument that we've heard specifically with regards to our performance capture artists. Well, we've always been capturing their data and reusing it. And we're like, well, that doesn't mean it's right.
You can create a believable synthetic digital double of a person, at least of their voice, with 3 to 30 seconds worth of audio now. We don't want them to do that without our consent. It's me being replicated into a digital version of me. Voice print is so unique to each person that the government uses it to target people. That you can use it in investigations to say, oh yes, this is the voice of that person who's talking to that other person who's committing a crime. If it's that recognizable, it should not be available for anyone to use.
And what we realize now is that there's no protection in the contracts that we sign. So you want to create a database of the stuff that I've done for you, and you want to use it for something else? Let me choose whether I want to be involved in that or not, because this is new. This isn't what we agreed on.
I signed away my voice to an AI company, and I massively regret it. It was the very beginning of AI sort of coming into play as a voice actor. So I was naive. I synthesized my voice with this like pretty big company. I signed over full rights, full access to my voice, and they still have it. I have very limited control over revoking those rights. I recorded several hours of conversation for a flat buyout fee, meaning they give me a sum of money. I can never ask for any more money from them, and then they have full access to my voice. For the amount I'm actually hearing the artificial version of my voice, they didn't pay me enough money. Especially when it's genuinely a threat to your profession. They're using my voice every day, and I am not being compensated for it. I don't know what the hell I was thinking.
Film and TV came out of almost theater and art. Games started with the gameplay. Performers and writers and musicians have been added afterwards. And there's still a mentality in the games industry that performers are secondary. Which means our rights and our work and our creativity isn't a major consideration.
To have someone look at our performance capture artists and tell them that what they do is data, not performance, is just, it's beyond insulting. Those of us who do this work have been training for decades, for years, you know, just like anyone who is a specialist in their craft.
And what I'm afraid could happen is what you could get are the stars and the wannabes and nobody else.
What happens to the new unheard voices? And I mean developers, I mean writers, I mean actors, I mean everybody. How are they supposed to make their way in the creative industries when it's not about creativity anymore?
If you put out one performance and then you have this kind of sinister force that comes in, the AI, and it's like, well, we blended, you know, it was only 4% you, and then we kind of just used a couple other people and blended it in with this. And it's like, stop, just stop. Like, let's use human beings on a singular basis and just kind of let them do their jobs and be aware of what happens afterwards.
You know, I've kind of built my career and so voiceover, I also coach, I do demos, and I have seen people kind of falling off in terms of like students emailing me being like, you know, I've tried to do voiceover for a while, and people who are really talented, like people who should be working and booking work, it's just really competitive. You know, I've seen that kind of fall off.
It's not as dramatic as there will never be acting in games ever again, but it is, what's the health of this community?
What's the loss to this community? What happens when people leave because it's just not worth it, because the abuse is too extreme, because it doesn't, because they're not being compensated properly or their consent is being violated? I mean, you lose human beings to this process that I love, this medium that I love, this community that I love. And that loss could be quite large and just, devastating.
The more people that you just kind of like erase from the process, the more the art will suffer at the end of the day. Sooner or later, you're going to have everyone not want to do this anymore. You're going to have no one have aspirations to pursue this, and you won't have people, coming and knocking on the door to audition because it's like, it's not worth it.
Then the industry will hollow out, and it will end up eating itself.
SAG-AFTRA in the States have come to the point where they've had to go out on strike for interactive media, as they call it, which covers games.
In a nutshell, we want three things: consent, compensation, and transparency when it comes to AI.
If you are going on strike, it means that you have tried and tried and tried to come to an agreement, and then you realize that it's just not possible.
I definitely know that there's already 2 studios who I think I've been blacklisted from because of this. People have been openly posting when they've turned down work, including some big name actors who have refused to reprise roles that they've done for 12 years.
I think what they're not acknowledging is that there's a lot more worker solidarity here. There's a lot more understanding that we are the people who actually make the things. You're the people who make a whole lot of money from the things and distribute the things, and that's fantastic. That's great. It's an interesting ecosystem, but it's not really working out well for people like myself in the middle, people like some of the other workers who are lower to the bottom of this whole chain.
I have a few friends who have seen casting notices go out to replace them in major video games, and I think the fans are going to hate that. I have a connection to this character. This character has been the same voice for years, and now you're just going to change the voice because you don't want to sign.
I am striking, and it's been hard because I've had to turn down a lot of projects. Video games is where I make all of my money. Like that's my job. And my husband as well, he's a video game composer. So it definitely is affecting our household. I look at it for a long-term thing of like, it's going to be tough now, so hopefully when we come to some sort of agreement, it'll be better in the long term, and it'll help me keep my job longer so I won't be replaced by AI.
I think I started to see work drop off even through the negotiation process. And then certainly when I, went on strike, I wasn't directing for Fortnite anymore. And it's so important to me. Like the question of how this settles and whether this work stays protected or not is so urgent. I will feel so much more hope and energy and excitement to invest back into it when I know that we're safe. And until then, I'm really just kind of focused on the fight.
It happened to us so quickly because the databases were there to be used. You don't really care about it unless it happens to you or someone you love. The only thing that we can do is make sure that we get regulations in place for our industry, but to also make others aware that this is what's coming.
We know that it is becoming harder and harder for these companies to find voices for their games. And we know that because we are seeing auditions come out outside of LA now, because they're not finding the talent here because people are refusing to work the job.
There are a lot of developers, publishers, and studios who've signed up to interim agreements.
Yeah, I think it's almost 100 games. Some studios have signed for all of their projects, or some of their projects, or half a dozen of their projects, whatever it might be.
I think that the more companies that sign interim agreements and agree to AI protections, the more the dominoes will fall. And when we're left with only 3 or 4 major companies who won't sign, they'll be pressured into signing because everyone else has.
One side of my brain very sincerely believes that we could dramatically increase our leverage or our coverage of this space through this action because we're offering a contract that people really want and that many devs are happy to sign because they want to collaborate fairly and they see no issue.
It's looking positive, but you just don't know. The big players have to come to the table.
They folded on just the smallest, dumbest issues. So imagine if it's something like this that counts. Imagine if it's something like this that does impact the people who make their games on a day-to-day basis. And if those people get together in solidarity and say, no, we will not make games this way, I'm not really sure what they're going to do.
So what could AI be used for that wouldn't hurt creatives, but would enrich the player experience?
So if there is a game where I get to give an awesome performance, but my character is required to speak to each individual player and use their own first name or the first name that they chose, for every single person and pronounce it correctly, that is something that an AI can do, which is really cool. Interacting with you in a way that feels like a natural conversation. I think that's cool. And I can't do that as an actor because I can only record as many words as we can do in a studio session.
One of the big critiques with Starfield has been that it's just this huge, expansive universe. And so many people were complaining that, well, so many of the planets are just empty. Well, I can tell you, I recorded on that game for over 2 years, and they, I swear, hired almost every actor in LA for that game. I mean, it was probably 200 some actors, and it still wasn't enough. So if we're talking about games that really do want to scale up to a point where it's not physically possible, this is another alternative as a way that they could help populate some of those worlds.
One of the things that people really love in role-playing games like Skyrim or Baldur's Gate 3 or others is this ability to make choices, have this real freedom of choice on who you're going to be and what choices you're going to make and how you're going to affect the world. The challenge with that as a developer, though, is you have to create every single option and every single branching path. And it turns out you can only give so much choice before it becomes prohibitively expensive. And so I think the cool thing about AI Dungeon is instead of just selecting 3 options the developer gave you, you can literally type anything as your action and have amazing stories. So, you might meet a band of goblins in the forest, and instead of fighting them, you could befriend them and you could teach them how to play instruments and start a band and start touring around the kingdom performing at festivals. That's one of my first AI Dungeon stories that I loved.
So even if I had unlimited resources and I could hire anyone, I would still choose AI for one simple reason, and it is that the way how I use it, it's dynamic. So I need to generate the content for the user on the fly. So I need a new background in 10 seconds. I need new music, in 15 seconds. I need a new narration, new narrative, new perhaps quest, or maybe some new kind of experience for the player on the fly very quickly. And even if the quality is not as good as what a human could produce for me, the speed is what's enabling a completely new kind of experience.
If I had an unlimited budget, I would not be using AI all the time. I would definitely call up a couple of people that I've worked with before that I know will be very good fit for this project, and I would work with them instead. I would probably still use AI for rapid prototyping and world building, because it's nice to show to actors, artists, this is what we're going for.
If you can use AI in a way where you are just able to draw inspiration from it and then kind of go in with your creative vision, I think that's a lot more more of a respectable way to utilize the technology.
It's always hard when there are technology changes that significantly disrupt things. It happened when it went from 2D to 3D, where there are all these 2D artists and they're like, oh, this 3D thing, and 3D artists were a very different set of people. So there were people who really resisted that, and there were people who really embraced that. And now we're in a world where we have 2D and we have 3D artists. So I really think AI is, it's a tool at the end of the day. Fighting against the tide of technology that's a very uphill battle. And the reality is it's probably gonna advance, it's probably gonna change things. So instead of fighting, embrace it. And hopefully we can play a role in showing that to the world of what kind of things can exist. But I think as people start to see the kinds of experiences and the way it can actually build new creative works of art and empower creators in ways that people have never seen, I think people will start to become more excited and start to see the really cool positive potential.
Why do we consume art? Why do we love great performances that actors have given in films, television, video games? I would wager that it's because we have a yearning and a hunger to see ourselves reflected back on us so we can understand ourselves better and the world around us. That's what humans are really good at doing. AI, not so sure. But that doesn't mean there's not a place for it. That doesn't mean that it's not an exceptional tool that can help us. I think from all the conversations that I've had over the course of making this film, which I very much enjoyed, that's the thing that I'll take away. This is a tool to be used to help humans in their endeavor to create great entertainment and great art. It is not here to replace us. And anyone that thinks that that's a good idea and that it should be used as a way to cut corners and to get rid of people out of their teams really should have a long think about that before they do it. Thank you. I very much enjoyed making this film. Cheers.